All right, everybody, we are back. So we're gonna pick up right where we left off. Last time we were looking at how to make blueprints to gen these rooms inside of our labyrinth. There was a bit of an error at the end. It came down to me saving it after I had rotated it. Basically, if you first take a blueprint and then if you export it, it's going to export whatever orientation you have. So if you rotate it, then it's going to export it rotated. So that's why I had that error last time. I went ahead and corrected it though. All right, so this time what we're going to do is that we're going to look at putting encounters into the labyrinths. To do this, we're going to have to jump back over to our folders. And the main things that we're going to be looking at today are going to be over here inside of our encounter defs and our thing def buildings. So in the thing def buildings, you'll find a file for a spawner or template. Go ahead and open that up. Oh, actually, I think I already have it open. Nope, right over here. Okay, so the idea here is that these spawners are how we're going to put enemies and items inside of the labyrinth. Generally, because enemies have a tendency to go crazy or to starve to death or to wander out of position, it's usually best not to pre-spawn them inside of the labyrinth. It's usually best to do something where they get triggered and spawned reactively due to something that the player does. So what I've done right here is that these buildings are just exactly that, buildings with a special comp property, which is going to be the spawner, the pawn spawner comp property. This comp property will actually take care of both enemy and loot spawners, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how. So first off, most of this information up here you can change however you see fit. Right now I have it set to where it's an invisible building, right? So the adventure spawner graphic is just completely invisible or transparent. The size is small, and I also have it as non-selectable. Something I will have to do is give it a name. So for this right here, we'll go ahead and call it Temple of Doom. Template of Doom, excuse me. And this is going to be a spawner, so we'll just call this Melee A. Boom. Doesn't have to be too fancy, just want it to be unique. Because this spawner should be invisible and non-selectable, you don't really have to worry about the label in the description so much, since nobody will be able to select it to read it. Okay, let's jump on down to the real fun stuff, which is going to be the properties. So first off, is player. We want that as false. If this is set to true, it will spawn inside the it'll spawn as the player's faction. Thirds between spawns. The third is a tick. So this is basically how long you want it to take between each spawn. Generally, you'd say 60 is a second. So let's go ahead and do 30 for half a second. Number to spawn. This is how many you want to pump out. Go ahead and put out 2. Pawn kind is the type of enemy you want to put out. So the best way to figure out the types of enemies, come back over here, is to open up your debugging menu and do spawn. And these are going to be the actual names of the pawn kind. So if you see down here, we have Tribal Hunter and Tribal Archer. We also have like Tribal Warrior, right? So I'm probably just going to do a Tribal Warrior. Looks good to me. So let me swap back. So I'll go ahead and put this as Tribal Warrior. Newborn false. Even though it might be kind of funny to put that as true. Self-destruct. This means that it's going to kill itself after it spawns its load. So we're going to say true. So like that, we don't have a bunch of invisible spawners just sitting around for no reason. Is proxy. This is going to be a trigger device. So basically this means that it's going to drop its spawns or spawn its pawns whenever a player unit gets within range. So we're going to say true. And this is going to be our main method for triggering these spawners. Damage switch. This is another way of triggering it. Basically, if it gets below a certain health, then it will trigger it. Damage percent. This is the percent damage that it'll fall below before triggering. So 50%. But this is off, so I technically don't even have to put that in there. Get drops. We're going to put false. If this was a loot spawner, we'd put true. And what would happen is that we would put a cost list. And whatever the cost list is what it's going to drop after it self-destructs. So that's how we take care of the loot as well. Alright, proxy radius is going to be the radius that it detects people at. Generally, it's best to do it at about the radius of a room. So since we have a path width of 2, 6 is going to be our shortest room length. So Lord job, this is going to be a number of jobs. So hold on, let me see if I can show you real quick. All right, so this over here. So this is my jobs right over here. You can enter in any one of these. So you have assault, defend base as camel case, man turrets, siege, then stage, then attack. And basically these are the jobs I have coded in. I may put in more if they're useful. The main ones you're going to be using are going to be assault. Assault means that any pawn that's active with this job will seek out any of your buildings or pawns and try to kill them. Defend base means they kind of hang around where they were spawned and defend that area. So assault or defend base are usually the best ones for this. All right. Okay, so I'm going to put this one on assault. The faction name, this is if you're using mods. Right here, it's going to automatically put it to faction of ancients. For example, if you're using Sickboy Wee's Warhammer mod or Rimhammer mod, then you will have to change that since he has faction of ancients as being something else in his mod, right? So for this, we're going to say false. Is searched false? This is another trigger mechanism. This is how we're able to do searchables. And the idea is that if this was true, then whenever the player got up close to it, then a button would appear, this button here, and the button would have a certain saying on it. But since there's no button, we don't have to worry about it. The button would have a certain graphic on it, and since we have no button, we have to worry about that graphic, and it would have a description. And description is the tooltip. And since there's nothing, we don't have to worry about it. All right, so this right here takes care of our spawner. But wait, there's more. So what we're going to do as well, just to make this a little bit easier for us, let me go ahead and give this an extra comp property of glower. So the idea here is that I just want to be able to find this easily. And since they're invisible, well, you can imagine that they're kind of hard to find. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily give this building a glower property, just for the sake of us being able to see where they spawn at and get a good idea of what's going on. So right here I'm going to give it the comp properties glower, and let's make it, I guess we'll make them red. Alright, so it should be nice and bright. Now we have to go ahead and save this as an XML. Alright, now you can see I've saved it as an XML, and we are good to go with our spawner. Now once again, you can obviously make more than one. This is just for my tribal warrior, and once again, every one of these spawners will spawn 2 tribal warriors. Okay, so let's go ahead and go straight into an encounter. So let's go back and open up our encounter defs. Alright, here we see our encounter def template. So standard fare, we want to do a def name. So we're going to call this one template of doom. And this will be, so this is an encounter, so we'll say melee pod A. Alright, the label. The label, once again, we're not really going to see the label, so I don't have to actually worry about it. For the enemy spawner names, this is where you're going to put the def name of the spawner you just made. And it's a list, so you can actually list out however many spawners you want. So if you also want some archers and there's another spawner with archers, then you can do that as well. So because you can list out, you can have a combination of pawn kinds. Loot spawner names, this right here are spawners that will also spawn in. They're made mostly for loot, and they're there just to kind of give a little bit more option. Alright, encounter level, this is a very important number. If you read this whole top little section, I kind of write down some of the notes about how it was made. The math model, it's a little confusing at first, but once you use it, you get used to it. The real trick is to avoid very low and very high numbers. The thing is that if you put it at 100, then it's going to try to read it as a mini-boss. So if you put it as 100, then you should put the mini-boss tag to true. In which case I'm going to put it as false. If you put it as 0, then it's going to be a default, and it's going to be guaranteed to spawn as a background. basically what happens is that each encounter has a chance of spawning in each node, and they each roll their own chance all the way down. If no encounters win the chance, then nothing spawns there. If you put something to 0, then that's going to spawn there instead. Okay, anyway, so let's go ahead and give this one a nice little encounter level. We'll just say 30. And the spawn spread is how spread out the spawners will spawn whenever they do spawn. So we'll just give that 4. Let's make it a little bit more. Let's go ahead. Well, 3. Haha. Okay, so there we have it. Now we have a encounter def to put in here. So let's go ahead and save this as an XML. Save. Boom. Okay. And now, while we're at it, let me also go ahead and rename this. Just so we don't get confused. And I am also going to do the same thing for my building. Or for my spawner. Fantastic. Okay. So now that we have our spawner set up and we've loaded our spawner into our encounter defs, now we have to load the encounter def into the labyrinth def. So if you take your encounter def name, copy that up, and you come over to your labyrinth def, which we have over here. So right here, now we have 2 labyrinths. I'm going to put them in both. So the first labyrinth, labyrinth A, I'm going to come down and we are going to find the encounter def names right over here. So it should be under the def names section. I don't know why I paved tile there. Oh, let's try to put that there. Okay. Anyway, so so right here we're going to go ahead and list it out here. Now you want to have a nice variety of encounters to make the instance feel well, you know, diverse, right? So the more encounters you have, the more chances everything has of rolling inside of each node. So once again, you want to try to make as many encounters as possible and just kind of fill this list up. The encounters also include the loot, so you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and put this down below. So this is our second labyrinth. Our linked labyrinth, and we're going to save this, and let's see if this worked. Jumping back over to my game, restart. All right, let's get this going, and we're still going through the scenario. Okay, so here we are. Let's take a look. And we are going to open up our temples. Boom. And boom. All right. So first off, you can see the red glows indicating where spawners have ended up. So let me go ahead and... So right now, it should be noted that you want to... In fact, I'm going to have to check in on that. You want to try to use a large variety of rooms. In fact, actually, I might actually change it. So right here, for example, down here, you can see where we have a spawner that spawned inside of one of our blank rooms. Where is it at? Right here. So you can see that I have my invisible spawner selected. And the so the idea is that whenever a guy passes by, then it's going to spawn inside of this room. They're going to have to break their way out. So this is why it's important to make sure you don't have these blank rooms. I might add a function later on to where it causes them not to spawn in the rooms. But the idea here is that the further back you get, the higher chance it has of spawning. So you can see that the end here and here, which is the deepest part of the dungeon, actually ended up with with spawns there. But likewise, you can also see where they end up in the rooms as well. So it should give you a nice little encounter, a nice little time to kind of run through and attack. All right, outstanding. And that right there, boys and girls, is how we do our encounter system. So let's say we want to do a loot. Well, actually, let me save the loot for a later date. I'm going to go ahead and cut this video out right here before it gets too long. Y'all like and subscribe. And next up, what I'm going to do, I don't want to spend too much time on the encounter system. I could literally sit here for days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press onto making this adventure. And we're going to make yet another labyrinth, believe it or not. So I'll see you then.